So, to start today, I encourage you just to close your eyes, a moment that you might not have had all day, but just to close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, take a deep breath, slow, deep breath in. Let's do that 3 times together. So, welcome to the Homeschool Mom Retreat, a time where you can get away, take a breather, and just be for a few moments. So, one of the very first things that I'm going to ask you to do is to ask yourself, how are you feeling right now? You don't need to say it out loud. If you've brought a journal, you're welcome to write in the journal a sentence or two of how you're feeling, what you're feeling. How we're feeling is usually in our experience because of the things that's been going on throughout the day. So just think to yourself, what has been going on throughout the day that would trigger the feelings that you're feeling right now? When was that first moment in the day when you felt the feelings that you're feeling right now? Maybe you're excited about being away and getting a refresher, wondering what might be the possibilities. Maybe you're relieved that you get to have quiet time and you haven't had this quiet time for a long time. Maybe you're still stirred up from a conversation or argument or a challenge that you've had with a child today. Just allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Be present to what you're feeling. Where are you feeling what you're feeling? Are you feeling it in the pit of your stomach? Are you feeling it underneath your hand, in your heart? Are you feeling it as you feel tingles in your hands or your fingers? Take a slow, deep cleansing breath in for about 5 beats. Hold it for 5 beats, and then exhale slowly for 5 beats. We'll do that 3 times. Before you open your eyes, I invite you to consider what you most want to get out of this time: a retreat, a time away. In your mind, state your intention or write it in your journal. What would you like to get out of this 1 hour time away? My intention for today is to help you do these 6 things: to reassess your homeschool vision, to help you release your self-sabotaging mindsets, to reimagine how you want to show up, to recognize your emotional landscape, renovate your self-care strategies, and recharge intentionally. A whole bunch of re's, I call it. And there is no way that we can truly do that in a 1 hour period, but we are going to touch on each of those different elements so that we can feel rejuvenated. Over the course of 4 weeks, we're able to dig deep into all of these different areas. But today, I'm going to introduce you to those 6 different areas. Reassess your homeschool vision, release self-sabotaging mindsets, reimagine how you want to show up, recognize your emotional landscape, renovate your self-care strategies, and recharge intentionally. So with your intentions in mind, if you would put into the chat your intentions, then I can directly engage what your intention is here today. And for those of you that aren't able to attend, you're welcome to also send me an email message. Tell me what your intention would be behind a retreat, because we all have different scenarios. We all have different reasons for coming into homeschooling. We all have different reasons for engaging our kids the way we do, or the stories that we have. So a retreat would mean different things for different people. Well, I'm so glad you're here, because what you're doing today is setting aside time for you, which I know, and as a homeschool mom of almost a decade and a half of 4 kids, my kids are now aged 14 to almost 22. And in that decade and a half, I learned very, very intently that my self-care needed to be addressed. My wellness needed to be addressed, that I needed to nurture the nurturer. And I didn't know that right off the top. I most definitely did not know that right off the top. In fact, I wrote a book, which I say I wrote a book for me and for you, because I wrote this book in a way to encourage myself, but also to encourage you to nurture the nurturer. And it only came about because of my own practical experience, that I hit a wall in about my 3rd or 4th year of homeschooling and realized that I didn't want to do this homeschool thing. But actually, I did want to do the homeschool thing. I just didn't want to do it the way that I was doing it. I wanted my family life to have a very different emotional energy. I wanted to have our memories wrapped up in positive things, the things that you could put on your Instagram account, and the things that you'd put into a scrapbook, because there was no Instagram account when I started. So I have a lot of scrapbooks and now an Instagram account. And I'm so grateful for all those memories. But back in the day, the way that it was feeling in my 3rd year wasn't at all how I wanted to experience family life. So Amby, thank you for sharing. You said, I'm overwhelmed that one of my kids is going to school, the other's homeschooling. I'm not sure what our day will look like yet. I guess just de-stress myself before I can think. Yes, exactly. De-stressing and coming more into ourselves so that we know in our soul, and we know certainly what the right step is. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So I know that everyone has some very different reasons for showing up here today or for listening to this retreat. So for whatever reason or intention that is, keep that locked in the back of your mind as we go through these 6 different elements of the Homeschool Mama Retreat. Because I can see Noreen is joining us, I just want to say, welcome, Noreen. I will have the recording available for you later, and you'll be able to take a look at the things that we were sharing. But just to stop for a moment and just encourage you to take a slow, deep breath. Ask yourself how you're feeling. Ask yourself what you want to gain from this retreat. If you have a journal or a piece of paper, grab that and write down what your intention is. So I just shared about my own story, why self-care and wellness is really important, and also that I'd written a book, and I wrote the book both for me and for other homeschool moms, which I called in the beginning of the book my co-journeyers as we homeschool together. And I introduced the 6 different components of the Homeschool Mom Retreat, which we are going to dive deep into the Homeschool Mom Retreat, which happens over the course of 4 weeks or 4 sessions. But today I'm going to discuss them briefly, and we'll go a lot more deeply and also get into your stories and how these concepts will apply to your specific story in the retreat. So these are the 6 different elements of the Homeschool Mom Retreat. To reassess our homeschool vision, release self-sabotaging mindsets, reimagine how we want to show up, recognize our emotional landscape, renovate our self-care strategies, and recharge intentionally. All the re's, but the most important re is rejuvenate. That's the goal. So the first element is to reassess our vision. So I'd invite you to close your eyes, and I'm going to do a visualization technique with you that'll help you go back to your very first day of your homeschool family life, or maybe your family life if you aren't homeschooling, but go back to your very first homeschool day. Imagine what it was like, if you can remember how old your children were, the circumstances that led you to homeschooling, the hopes that you had at the beginning of your days. What did it feel like those first few days? What did you hope for each of your children? Is there a specific word that you would attach to the energy or the feeling or the emotion of that day? And in choosing this path, what were you hoping to accomplish for you? Now fast forward to today. So today's Wednesday, middle of the week. You have a different experience of your homeschool. You've probably learned a whole lot about yourself, and you've learned a whole lot about your kids. You've learned a whole lot about learning. You've probably read books from genres you weren't expecting, discovered there's math concepts you don't understand. You learned that there's a lot of people asking you a lot of questions about your homeschool choice. What's a word that you feel from today? What's the feeling word that you had earlier? How is today, the experience you had today, compared to the experience that you had your first day? So I invite you to grab your journals and record the difference between that time and now, the difference between your first day and today. For your homework, I love being a homeschool mom, giving another homeschool mom homework. I think that's hilarious. But for your homework, you can record and answer in your quiet journaling time. What is the word that you would like representing your vision of your homeschool? You've learned about learning, you've learned about yourself, and you've learned about your homeschool kids. All of those things inform your vision. So the ideas that you once had, they change and they grow along with you and along with your kids. And so that vision that you've had shifts into the present based on all the things that you've learned over the last weeks, years, months. So what would be the word that you would want your homeschool to reflect? Okay, so let's shift gears and we're going to talk about releasing our self-sabotaging mindsets. So before I share what I know about releasing self-sabotaging mindsets, which is a lifetime, I'll just add, that goes beyond homeschooling, much beyond homeschooling, learning about the self-sabotaging mindsets that I've had and continue to have that I still work with. I ask you, what is the first thing that comes to mind when I say, let's release a self-sabotaging mindset? You might want to write that down. We could spend 6 weeks of coaching or possibly a year of coaching discussing this very thing because our mindsets influence everything that we do. However we speak to other people, the activities that we choose in our days, how satisfied we feel, whether we feel guilty or failing or that we're not good enough. It influences whether or not we're listening to what other people are telling us or what they, listening to whether or not we think, listening to what other people think about what we're doing. It influences everything. So what is the first thing that you thought of when I said, let's release unhelpful mindsets? So one of the very first things that I learned in my wellness journey is to recognize that just because I have a thought doesn't mean that the thought is true. I hope that you're familiar with that. I'd love to hear if this concept is something you've been introduced to before, or if I am introducing this for the first time. Just type in your thoughts. I was once in attendance to Dr. Daniel Amen's webinar, and he had said in his webinar that your thoughts are your choice. Dr. Daniel Amen is a psychiatrist who learned about brain scans and has brain scanned people all over the world. So he's learned all sorts of things about neuropsychiatry and how the brain functions. And he isn't the first person to know about this concept, but he's the first person to introduce it to me. He's the author of a book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. He said that we need to assess our automatic negative thoughts. We default to thinking negative thoughts. It's just what we do as humans, probably a protective mechanism from way back, that we just want to make sure that we're on guard, that we're protecting ourselves, always preventing something that's just ahead of us. The problem is that those negative thoughts are not always true. They're not always accurate. And when he first introduced that concept to me, I thought, wow, mind blown. This couldn't be real. All of my thoughts, why would I be thinking them if they weren't true? And there are reasons for that, which I won't go into detail right now, partly experience, partly maybe our parents have told us certain things, but there's many reasons why we might think a thought But what I know for sure is that if you have a partner or a best friend, if you have a discussion on a topic, you'll discover that your partner or your best friend don't think the same way that you do. And that's how you know that all of our thoughts are not necessarily true, that how you think or how I think or how your partner thinks might be very different. We all have different thoughts. When we allow ourselves to really tell ourselves that our thoughts are true, we instinctively respond to that. For instance, if we see our child running into the street, we think to ourselves, we don't want them to die, so we're going to pull them back and keep them from jumping into the street. Excuse me. We might have a thought as we watch our child sit at the table and refuse to pick up that pencil to do that activity that we've encouraged them to do. We might tell ourselves the thought, our child is being lazy. And our reaction to that laziness is to be frustrated or angry or insistent that they do that work, that they can't be lazy. And so we look at them in a certain way, versus if we had the thought as we watch them at the table that they're struggling, I see them struggling, what do I do to help them? That would be a very different mental process in our heads. We would engage it very differently. So it's really important for us to engage our thoughts intentionally. We have to ask ourselves regularly, what am I thinking? And I don't know about you, but we have too much to do to be concerned about what am I thinking? Or at least that's what I believed once upon a time. Now I realize that that is one of the most important staples of healthy mental or healthy mental spaces, is really to address our thoughts. Just like choosing, certain foods to consume that are feeding our brains, assessing our thoughts and asking, what am I thinking, is an important routine that we need to create. But you ask, when should I do that? Because I have so many things to do. And so if you have one of these, if you have an iPhone, or if you have a flip phone, no, not a flip phone, that won't work on a flip phone. But if you have some sort of device or an old-fashioned alarm clock, put in a reminder once a day, a reminder to say, breathe, or a different word, maybe ask my thoughts, how I'm feeling, or how are you feeling? Or maybe you could ask yourself, breathe. Put a reminder into your phone to ask yourself how you're doing inside. You can ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? When you get into a habit of checking your thoughts, you're able to release those unhelpful mindsets. There's something about being self-aware and learning self-awareness tools that helps to dispel unhelpful mindsets. Something magical, maybe. Not really. I don't think it's magical, but being aware of yourself, just seeing your thoughts, acknowledging your thoughts, helps us sometimes to see that maybe it's not true. Maybe there's an alternate way to think about whatever the thing is. So this is a long-term strategy that we can do. It's a life work to dig deep into our thoughts. But when we get clear on what our thoughts are, we can release ourselves from those unhelpful mindsets. Of course, it also works to walk alongside someone that can help reflect back to you what you're thinking, ask you deep questions about why you're thinking what you're thinking. Okay. So if you are someone challenged by these three things that I hear very often, if you're challenged by a feeling of failure, or you're feeling not good enough in whatever you're choosing to do as a homeschool mom, or just in your life in general, or you're always asking the question or always wondering what will other people think, you can address each of those challenges. You can release those unhelpful mindsets. I'm going to move to the next discussion point, and that is to reimagine how you want to show up. When I talk about how do you want to show up, I'm asking, how do you want to feel like you approached your homeschool or how you felt in your day? How do you want to feel in your homeschool? How do you want to feel in your family life? Life will throw us things at times that inevitably we will feel unpleasant feelings. We'll feel angry. We'll feel sad or depressed or frustrated, or you fill in the blank of possible emoticons. We're humans and humans feel feelings. We have to acknowledge first how we feel, but then we can also envision how we want to experience life, how we want to create a scrapbook. Like I said in the beginning of this discussion, we're creating a scrapbook of memories. We're creating an Instagram account of beautiful moments. Our goal is to gather those things. We can't make the perfect life. That's not what I'm suggesting. If you've heard me speak on my podcast, you may have heard me share that I have a website that I named Capturing the Charmed Life. When I started that website, I was maybe 3 months into homeschooling, because that is exactly what I wanted. Is I wanted to capture the charmed life. And I think that's probably most people's goals, is that they want to experience all the good things. And I think that's fair. That is what we want. And also, there will be challenges along the way. And we don't get to always choose what the challenges are. But we can decide what we're going to do with those challenges. Yes, every single one of them. And though some of them will require a lot of internal work, they might require a lot of outside support for us to help us work through something. They might require us to surrender and let go of what we thought things would look like. We are able to address those challenges. So how do you want to feel, or how do you want to show up in your life? I have the benefit of hindsight now. I've been a mom for almost 23 years. I can't believe I'm saying that, because it feels like I was just where you're at, in the thick of things with little ones and with a lot of demands and uncertainties. Is this the right thing? And is this going to be good enough? And other people are questioning me on things. It does not feel like it was that long ago for me. Except here's the thing. I now have an Instagram account that I started not in the early days of my homeschool, because Instagram wasn't even in existence when I started homeschooling. But I have an Instagram account that goes way back, as far back as I could sign up to engage it. And I have pictures of my kids when they were very young and when I was in the thick of my homeschool life. And I can guarantee you I didn't put a single bad day on my homeschool Instagram account. So those aren't the ones I've got locked in my memories. I put the really happy ones in there. And though I've got them there as a record for myself and of the joys or the beautiful moments that I had with my family, I now know that those days come to an end. So I have something called hindsight. I've been there, done that. And my homeschool life is coming to a close. My family life is coming to a close. I have my 2 daughters that are graduated and in post-secondary school across the country. My 3rd daughter is about to graduate and is about to go across the country, not too far away from her sisters. And my youngest is about to go into high school. And it feels like yesterday when I was sleep deprived. I've got a list, though, a mile long, of all my Instagram photos, all the pictures, all the memories that I've got in that. And I frankly didn't think that it was going to come to a close. I heard that it would, and other people said that it would, but I didn't really think that it was going to come to a close. And now I am so grateful for all those memories, most of them, definitely the ones on Instagram. And yet it comes to an end. I have a certain amount of time that I get to show up on purpose and be what I want to be in my family life. I can see that for myself. And I'm bringing that up because that's you too. Even though you might be in the thick of things and it feels like a lot, it is, and then it won't be there anymore. So how do you want to show up in your homeschool, in your family life right now? The fourth thing that I want to share is to acknowledge and recognize your emotional landscape. So I spoke to you about acknowledging our emotions and acknowledging our mindsets. But I want to stop and pause to honor and acknowledge the challenges that we have with those things. Some of us are easily triggered when a child is complaining. Others of us can tolerate that for a good long time and only really have frustrations when kids are fighting, which as homeschool moms, I'm pretty sure the average is higher in a homeschool family, or at least we're seeing it more often. And we have emotional reactions to those things. In the last month or so, I put out a course, a self-compassion for homeschool mom course. And I put that out there because those are all the practices that I have learned to include in my homeschool journey. But I'm going to share 3 with you. One is to practice the pause. If you know there is a moment that you're routinely experiencing in your home where you feel very frustrated or you don't know what to do with this feeling, or you're really not confident or uncertain of how to deal with something with a child, really even with an adult, but I'm just going to focus on the kids. Practice a pause. You don't have to give an answer or a response right now. Unless a child is running into traffic or doing something dangerous right here, right now, you don't have to do something right now. You can pause. You can do what we were doing before, putting your hand on your heart and practicing breathing. Because when you do practice that breath work, it slows down all your physiological mechanisms. In other words, it puts a slowdown on your body. So all your different systems slow down because you're breathing. That's a scientific thing, not something that sounds clever. So when you are breathing slowly on purpose, your body naturally slows down, like you putting a foot on the brake of a car. It will slow the engine down. And why would you want to do that in a moment that you're frustrated? Haha, yes, for that reason, so that you don't immediately react. Because we get into habits in our homes where we routinely react in ways that we know we don't want to, but it is something that we have learned over the course of time. So practice a pause. You can also, if you're truly challenged in a moment of frustration and you're practiced in unhealthy patterns, you can spin on your heels and walk away. If that's the first time you've heard someone say that, then I'm going to tell you, as a mom that has learned how to had to learn how to deal with her anger, learning to just walk away when in a moment you know that what's about to come out of your mouth is not going to be useful, or your response is not going to be useful, you're going to later feel guilty or shamed by your own response, you can just walk away. Long term, the goal isn't to walk away from relationships. Long term, the goal is to listen to the person in front of you, hear their feelings, no matter what they are, and to ask about those feelings, genuinely be curious about their feelings, ask them what their needs are, or help them if they're young to explore their needs and try to deal with their needs so that you can address what they need, because the big emotions always come from unmet needs. So our goal in the moment isn't always to walk away, but if you are already practiced on unhealthy patterns and you know that how you're engaging isn't useful and self-control hasn't worked yet, then just walk away. And what are you going to do after you walked away? I encourage you to go to your mirror. I learned this the good old-fashioned way. I didn't learn this in the book. Nobody told me how to do this. I just came upon it one day because I remember, I wish I knew the scenario that triggered me, but I felt very intense and very frustrated. And I walked away and I instinctively texted my husband, right? In the middle of the day, homeschool moms were frustrated. We text our mom, our best friend, our husband, or somebody, or a significant other. So we're texting away. Nope, he's not responding to me. My husband works in emergency as a physician. In fact, he's there right now. And so I was in an emergent moment myself, but he clearly was in a more emergent moment because I am blessed enough that he always responds, but he couldn't respond that day. And so what was I going to do? Well, I decided to text my friend. Okay. And my friend wasn't available either, though. And she usually is too. So then I decided instinctively just to go to the mirror. It wasn't thought out because that part of my brain wasn't working that well that day. I went to my mirror and just looked at myself. I don't know where that came from, but I just stood in front of the mirror, and I encourage you to do this too. This is the most wild experience if you've not done this before, when you're feeling especially overwhelmed by big feelings. Stand in front of the mirror and just look at yourself. Because if you happen to be feeling very intense and angry with your child, you will see on the other end of that mirror that yes, indeed, you can see that you are angry, but you also look confused. What am I supposed to do about this? This isn't working the way I thought. I thought this child was going to do the thing that I asked them to do, and they're not doing it. And I'm alarmed. I'm worried. I'm anxious. He's not doing the right thing. Or sad. I'm really sure I was yelling that day because I remember feeling like my eyes were red. I was in tears, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror as though I were looking at my friend. And you know what I would say to my friend if my friend had that kind of morning where she felt really confused, uncertain what she was supposed to do with the child, but really frustrated that my child wasn't doing the right thing, or her child wasn't doing the right thing? I wouldn't be looking back at her, telling her that, yes, you should be so angry at your child. You should just lambaste them with words. Or, as what happens when one does get really angry with their child, they feel very bad about what they did. They feel shamed. They feel guilty. I wouldn't be saying to my friend, yes, you, friend, are bad. You should feel bad. You should feel guilty. Nope. I would look at them and say, I'm really sorry that you're having such a hard day. Really sorry that happened. I see you. I see how amazing of a mom you are, how nurturing you are, how present and attentive you are. You're always caring about whatever your child needs. You talk about that often with me. Those are the kind of words I would say. And though I didn't say those words to myself in the mirror, I didn't need to because I was thinking about it in here. I was looking at myself in the mirror and I was noticing, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. That's hard. This isn't going the way you thought. This is a hard day. I care about you, and I know you care about your kids too. So those are the 3 different techniques that I share here when you want to recognize and honor your emotional landscape, the things that are going on in here that come out here with your kids, is to practice the pause. Make sure you do that you walk away if you're feeling too intense, and do your mirror work. I could also add a little note here about journaling. If you haven't heard me speak already, I wrote this book, and even in here, I have a few different areas where you can write inside the book. But then the last few years, when I moved into life coaching, when I moved into podcasting, then life coaching, I had my own coach say to me, what can you do to serve women in the homeschool community? And so I spent time thinking about it. What could I do to serve? And so far, I've come up with these different areas that you're hearing me speak about today that I think would serve you in the bigger picture. Notice that I'm not sharing curriculum choices. I am perfectly capable, but there are many people doing that. And it really doesn't feel like that's the reason I'm supposed to be here. I'm serving homeschool moms or women, really women outside the homeschool realm now too, but I'm serving women in the homeschool community so they can show up on purpose in their homeschools. Or as you've heard me recently say, that I want you to be able to be authentic, confident, and purposeful in your homeschool and your life. And so I started writing journals. Not only did I write this book, and I've got courses of various topics like self-compassion and building boundaries. I've got a retreat that you can take online and also one-on-one with me. I've got one for overcoming overwhelm and also the new homeschool mom course. I've got a variety of different courses that I've written, but then the least expensive coaching tool that I can offer you is a self-awareness tool called journaling. So I created journals around all those topics. I think being self-aware is one of the most important things you can do as a human on the planet, but most definitely as a mom, as you homeschool. Okay, so we have 2 more tools left. And the next one is pretty easy and is probably the one you thought I was going to discuss right off the top. It's to renovate your self-care strategies. So would you put a note in the messages on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how high, if 10 were the highest, what would be the number that you would give for yourself on your homeschool mom report card for your self-care strategies and how you're looking after yourself? So in my experience, and still to this day, it does not take very much for me to get lost in everything else and everyone else and not address the things that I need the most. Can I hear an amen? No, I already know. It's a common mom experience. It's not just a homeschool mom experience, except as a homeschool mom, we just throw in a whole bunch more expectations of ourselves and certainly our time. So in the first few years of family life, do you remember if you had a young one in your family, a baby, if you lived through the postpartum years, or if you had to wake up every couple hours to address a baby's needs, your sleep was demolished and it influenced how you experienced your day. I remember thinking, this is crazy. I cannot function like this because I actually had my firstborn was colicky. So in a conversation, a casual conversation that someone asked my husband and I, when did your firstborn first fall asleep? Or like, when did she first sleep through the night? And he said, oh, 2-3 months. And I said, no, not so. He's been doing night shifts for almost 30 years, so I'll give him grace. But no, not so. She was solidly 10.5 months. And I remember on the other side of those nights thinking, I can't do this. I don't feel normal or healthy. So I would encourage you that the number one thing that you want to do is regulate your sleep. And I know that that is very difficult if you have young ones. And there is sometimes a season of our parenting lives where it is just not going to be ideal. So I acknowledge that. But the goal is to get ourselves enough sleep so we can have perspective. Sleep, if you want to regulate it, the sleep researchers will say to go to sleep, go to bed at the same time each night. It's not about when you wake up in the morning. It's about when you go to bed at night, to go to bed at the same time each night. And of course, there's many factors into why your sleep might be interfered with. So we could speak much more deeply if this is a challenge for you in the retreat. The next thing I want to share is nutrition. So I find that in our culture, there's far too much discussion on body image and how we look. And I think from the 1980s, when I was growing up as a girl, as a teenager, to now, there's a very different approach to how We think about our bodies and whether we should accept them or how we should look at ourselves or how we should engage food consumption and all those things. And so I'll share this one thought or these two thoughts. One is make one of your goals when you're eating to fuel your brain. Because back to Dr. Daniel Amen's discussion about change your brain, change your life, what you put into your mouth and what is absorbed in your stomach is influencing how you feel. The research is bearing out in that one thing, that how the nutrition that you gain from food is influencing how happy you are. Literally, it is influencing the serotonin uptake in your body. And then the second thing I'll say is, and this I gained from a food coach, holistic integrative food coach named Dina Barslaw. She said the most remarkable thing to me that that ties in with the self-compassion concept, that how your relationship with food is your relationship with yourself. It reflects your relationship with yourself. So it might be valuable if you're challenged by food issues or how you feel about food or how you feel about your body. You might benefit from discussing with a food coach or a wholeness coach, or they come with different names, but a health integrative coach, to ask yourself, how are you relating to food? Because how you're relating to food is how you're relating to yourself. Food is good. Food is joy. It is traditions and memories, and it makes us feel wonderful and it's fun to prepare. It's what I'm going to go do actually after our time together, is spend time with whoever wants to cook with me, to stand at the island and chop some food, put on some music, and just enjoy the process of creating something nourishing. So how we relate to our food is how we relate to ourselves. In the other thing that probably you knew I was going to share about is exercise. The goal for exercise, I've learned over the course of time, we have different goals. Sometimes we have, certain athletic things as hobbies. I love hiking. I was snowshoeing a couple days ago with my husband, living in the Canadian wilderness. I got a lot of snow. And so snowshoeing or cross-country skiing. I'm not a downhill skiing girl. But I love going for hikes or canoeing or swimming or all those things. And I think of exercise as activities I enjoy on one hand, but then some days I see exercise as a way to burn off tension, because the emotions that we carry in our body want to go somewhere. And so for me, I find jumping on elliptical for 20 minutes, or depends on the day, or doing certain things very actively, dancing to a Spotify playlist, doing things that are very active actually helps me burn off tension, which is useful as a homeschool mom. You can see where I'm going with this. Also, I would encourage you to consider your mental health. So if you're feeling especially lonely or disconnected, do something. You can join me in coaching, or you can ask someone, reach out and ask someone. These last few years have been challenging for everyone on some level, and it has put a load of pressure on families to engage each other in a kind, nourishing way. And we've had to isolate, come in together on our own. There's all sorts of things that have happened over the last few years that has really disintegrated connections and caused big shifts in our communities, and that has affected our hearts. So reach out to someone, if that be me, or I actually have a homeschool mom support group online too. You're welcome to join that, but we can find different ways to engage your community, your needs, to address your loneliness or your feeling of disconnection. And the last thing I'm going to share with you today is to recharge intentionally. So you're doing that today. So congratulations, because you actually did do that. I know if I was at your stage, I thought the grocery store was my place to recharge, because my grocery store did not have my children in it. It might have had a few hundred people, but it didn't have kids that were asking me things. And so I found that as a default place to recharge. And if you're in that scenario, then I encourage you that the grocery store is not your place to recharge, even though some days it feels like it's the only place. But try to find just 15 minutes a week to do something that's just for you. And if 15 minutes sounds like a small number, then just 15 minutes a day. Do things that help you learn. Do things that help you find a space alone, like entirely alone from people, if that's a walk to the mailbox or something that just truly creates a separation or a distance so that you can feel alone and think your thoughts and be at peace for 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. And fun. Find your place of fun, something that you enjoy doing that is just for you. Continue to nourish the things that are you outside your homeschool mom role. It does seem like that is not necessary at this point, but it's fuel for you for the long term, so that you have both not forgotten who you are, but also making sure that you have fuel, just like you bring your car to the gas station, unless you have a Tesla or some electric car. I'll find a different story for that next time. But you need fuel for your journey, your homeschool journey. Continue to develop the you that was you before you were a homeschool mom, because one day you won't be a homeschool mom. And I can see that that's happening for me. That is where I'm moving toward. Although my daughter the other day asked me if I would homeschool her kids. And I said, you betcha. If you can take me to the Bahamas for 3 weeks, I will homeschool your kids. But otherwise, I will encourage other homeschool moms on their journeys to enjoy, just really relish in all the beautiful memories that you got on Instagram, or you've got in your scrapbook, or you've got in your device in the camera, and really relish them and build on the charms of your homeschool life. It is a beautiful life. It is a challenging life, but it really is a beautiful life. I encourage you that if you can imagine that you want another separate space, or you want separate space to breathe, that using a time like this to set apart for maybe an hour a week with me to explore any of the discussion points that we've had today. If you want to go a whole lot deeper into them, then join me, because one-on-one, we're able to accomplish a lot more than you listening to an hour of me sharing about the most important points, the most important things for you in your homeschool journey. So if you don't know this already, I've offered this a few times, and I know there's a few people that are joining me again in the retreat. You'll receive live online one-on-one sessions, coaching sessions. And if you're not sure about what coaching is, because you're familiar with what therapy is, it's not the same, but we can talk about that. You can book a consultation with me, and we can have a chat about what coaching is versus therapy, and if it would be the right thing for you. I also offer a retreat course, a self-directed course. But if you join the retreat, then you have an option to use the course or the retreat course that's there as a springboard for coaching sessions for more clarifying intention and clarifying your perspective in your life. You'll also have a free signed copy of the Homeschool Mama Self-Care Nurturing the Nurturer book, a surprise self-care package in your mailbox, a $25 valued gift. One of those things will definitely be a Lindt sea salt dark chocolate, because that is my favorite. And of course, lifetime access to retreat updates. And if you sign up today, you'll receive the newly released Big Emotions Toolbox journaling workbook. So it's a journaling workbook that helps you do a deep dive into the most important things. This retreat is designed to rejuvenate you so you can be renewed, have a re-envisioned homeschool. You can reimagine your life. That's my goal for you. And if this sounds like something that you might need, then join me. So before I close, I want to do two things because I know sound is not necessarily to our favor here. I want to dedicate a song to you. It's called Ordinary Miracle. And as I find that, I'll also let you know that I have in the very back of my book a love letter for you. Yes, a love letter. Mama, has anyone told you that you have one of the best jobs in the world? Homeschooling can be a challenge to maintain mama's self-care, but the homeschool lifestyle can also be a charmed life and encourages mama's self-care. It's a challenge to build your needs, your wants, and your personality into your homeschool world. But it can be done, and it will be done, as you continue moving forward, instilling habits and practices that take care of you. So let's keep working towards turning our challenges into our charms. I wish you and your family health and happiness as you learn to go beyond survival to thriving as you nurture the nurturer. So there's a Sarah McLachlan song called Ordinary Miracle. It's not that unusual. When everything is beautiful, it's just another ordinary miracle today. So check the lyrics out, maybe throw it in Spotify and listen. That's the song I dedicate to you, because though there are challenges in this homeschool lifestyle, it is an ordinary miracle. And I want you to relish and be grateful for all that you have. It was a pleasure to spend time with you today.